Before we begin, I want you to pause for a moment. Think about the last time someone crossed your boundaries, the last time you felt that burning sensation in your chest, that urge to speak up, but you didn't. You stayed quiet, you smiled, you walked away, and later, maybe hours later, maybe days, you replayed that moment over and over in your mind, thinking of all the things you should have said. If this sounds familiar, then this message is for you. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover could change everything. There's something deeply wrong with how we've been taught to handle conflict. From the moment we could understand words, we were told, be nice, don't make waves, turn the other cheek, rise above it. These phrases, they sound noble, don't they? They sound like wisdom. But what if I told you they're actually chains? What if these very teachings, these supposed virtues, are the reason you feel so powerless in your own life? The great psychologist Carl Jung once observed that what we resist persists, and what we don't face in ourselves, we meet as fate in the outside world. Think about that for a moment. Every conflict you avoid doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It becomes a shadow, growing darker, heavier, more powerful with each passing day. Jung understood that wholeness, what he called individuation, requires us to face our shadow. And part of that shadow is our capacity for healthy aggression, for standing our ground, for saying no when no needs to be said. But society doesn't want you to know this. Society wants you docile, manageable, predictable. The Italian political philosopher Niccolò Machiavelli, often misunderstood, actually saw through this centuries ago. He wrote that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. Now, he wasn't celebrating this. He was warning us. When you always choose peace over truth, when you always choose silence over authenticity, you become one of those who allow themselves to be deceived. And worse, you deceive yourself. Let me share something that might disturb you. Psychologists have studied this phenomenon extensively. They've found that people who consistently avoid conflict don't actually have less stress. They have more. Their cortisol levels, the stress hormone, remain chronically elevated. Their immune systems weaken. They're more likely to develop anxiety, depression, even physical illnesses. Why? Because suppressed emotions don't vanish. They fester. They poison you from within. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, brilliant and controversial, had a term for this. He called it slave morality. Now, before you recoil at those words, hear me out. Nietzsche wasn't talking about actual slavery. He was talking about a mindset, a way of being in the world where we glorify weakness, call it virtue, and condemn strength, call it vice. When did standing up for yourself become aggressive? When did having boundaries become selfish? When did speaking your truth become problematic? I'll tell you when. It happened when those in power realized that a population that fears conflict is a population that's easy to control. Think about your workplace. How many toxic behaviors continue simply because good people stay silent? Think about your relationships. How many small resentments build into massive walls because nobody wants to have that conversation? Think about society itself. How many injustices persist because we've been taught that keeping the peace is more important than pursuing the truth? The psychoanalyst Karen Horney wrote extensively about what she called the compliant personality. These are people who move toward others, always seeking approval, always avoiding confrontation, always sacrificing their own needs. And you know what she discovered? This isn't love. It isn't kindness. It's fear. Pure and simple fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of rejection. Fear of being seen as difficult or demanding. But here's what nobody tells you. The people who truly respect you aren't the ones you never disagree with. They're the ones who know where you stand. They're the ones who've seen you defend your values, even when it was uncomfortable. They're the ones who trust you because they know you'll tell them the truth, even when it's hard. Alfred Adler, another giant in psychology, talked about the courage to be imperfect. He understood that healthy human beings make waves sometimes. They cause friction. They create tension. Not because they enjoy conflict, but because they value authenticity more than artificial harmony. Adler saw that many psychological problems stem from what he called life lies. The stories we tell ourselves to avoid facing difficult truths. And one of the biggest life lies: I'm keeping quiet to keep the peace. No, you're keeping quiet because you're afraid. And that's okay. Fear is human. But denying that fear, dressing it up as virtue, that's where the real damage begins. Let me tell you about an experiment. Researchers put people in groups and gave them problems to solve. In some groups, they encouraged healthy debate and disagreement. In others, they promoted harmony and consensus at all costs. Guess which groups performed better? The ones with conflict, every single time. Why? Because conflict, when it's about ideas and values, not about destroying people, leads to better solutions. It forces us to think deeper, to question our assumptions, to grow. The existential psychologist Rollo May wrote that depression is the inability to construct a future. And you know what makes it impossible to construct a future? Living a life that isn't yours. Biting your tongue so often that you forget you have a voice. Compromising so much that you lose track of what you actually want. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, discovered something profound about human nature. He found that we can endure almost any suffering, if it has meaning. But meaningless suffering, that destroys us. And what could be more meaningless than suffering in silence? When speaking up could change everything. Here's something that might shock you. Studies show that people who express anger appropriately, who engage in healthy conflict, actually have better relationships than those who avoid it. Why? Because real intimacy requires real honesty. And real honesty sometimes means disagreement. It means disappointment. It means working through difficult emotions together, not pretending they don't exist. The psychologist Harriet Lerner talks about the dance of anger. She explains that anger, when we listen to it, is actually a signal. It's telling us that something important to us is being threatened or violated. When you ignore that signal, when you suppress it in the name of being nice, you're not just betraying yourself. You're depriving others of the chance to really know you, to really connect with you. But I know what you're thinking. What if I lose people? What if they reject me? What if speaking up makes everything worse? These are valid fears. And sometimes, yes, you will lose people. But here's the truth nobody wants to admit. The people you lose by being authentic were never really yours to begin with. They were in relationship with your mask, not with you. Carl Rogers, the founder of person-centered therapy, believed that psychological health comes from congruence, when your inner experience matches your outer expression, when you constantly suppress your true feelings to avoid conflict. You create what he called incongruence. And incongruence, over time, leads to anxiety, depression, and a deep sense of emptiness. Think about the last time you stood up for something you believed in. Really stood up. Not aggressively, not cruelly, but firmly. How did it feel? Scary, yes, but also alive, electric, real. That feeling? That's your authentic self breaking through the cage of social conditioning. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard wrote about the sickness unto death, which wasn't physical death, but spiritual death. The death that comes from never becoming who you really are, from living your entire life according to other people's expectations, from choosing comfort over truth every single time. But here's the good news. It's never too late to change this pattern. Neuroplasticity research shows us that our brains can form new pathways at any age. The habits of submission and silence, they're learned, which means they can be unlearned. The fear of conflict, it's conditioned, which means it can be deconditioned. Start small. The next time someone interrupts you, finish your sentence. The next time someone crosses a boundary, name it. The next time you disagree, say so. Not with aggression, but with clarity. Not with hatred, but with self-respect. Notice how your body responds. That trembling, that's not weakness. That's your nervous system recalibrating. That's years of suppression finally finding release. That's your authentic self, pushing through the fear, demanding to be heard. The Gestalt therapist Fritz Perls had a prayer that went like this: I do my thing, and you do your thing. I am not in this world to live up to your expectations, and you are not in this world to live up to mine. This isn't selfishness. This is sanity. This is recognizing that you can't be authentic and universally liked at the same time. And that's okay. Here's what happens when you start embracing healthy conflict. At first, people will be surprised. Some might even be offended. They're used to the old you, the one who never made waves. But then, something interesting happens. The people who matter, they start respecting you more. They start trusting you more. Because now they know. When you say yes, you mean it. When you agree, it's genuine. When you support them, it's real. And the people who can't handle your authenticity, they fade away. And that space they occupied, it gets filled by people who appreciate the real you. People who want honest connection, not pleasant pretense. The depth psychologist James Hillman once said that we need to see through our ideas about ourselves. All those beliefs about being nice and good and peaceful, they might actually be covers for something else. For fear, for learned helplessness, for a deep belief that we don't deserve to take up space in this world. But you do deserve to take up space. Your thoughts matter. Your feelings matter. Your boundaries matter. And anyone who makes you feel otherwise is telling you more about themselves than about you. I want to leave you with this thought. Every single person you admire, every leader, every innovator, every artist who changed the world, they all had one thing in common. They were willing to engage in conflict when it mattered. They were willing to be disliked by some, to be truly valued by others. They chose authenticity over approval, truth over tranquility, growth over comfort. The question is, what will you choose? Will you continue to silence yourself in the name of false peace? Or will you finally give yourself permission to be real, to be whole, to be unapologetically, authentically, powerfully you? The choice is yours. But remember, every moment you spend in silence when you should speak is a moment of your life you'll never get back. Every boundary you don't set is an invitation for it to be crossed again. Every truth you swallow is a piece of your soul you sacrifice on the altar of other people's comfort. You weren't born to be palatable. You weren't born to be convenient. You were born to be real, to be present, to be a force in your own life, not a passenger. So right now, in this moment, I want you to make a decision. If you're ready to stop betraying yourself, if you're ready to embrace healthy conflict, if you're ready to reclaim your voice, then take action. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with the words, "I choose my truth." Because change doesn't happen in silence. It happens when we declare our intention, when we make it real, when we stop hiding and start living. Your journey to authenticity starts now. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. Because every moment you wait is another moment you live as less than who you really are. And you deserve so much more than that. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be known, not for who you pretend to be, but for who you actually are. The path won't be easy, but it will be real. And after a lifetime of pretending, isn't real exactly what your soul is craving? Take the first step. Your future self will thank you.